Nelson Mandela, born Rolihlahla Mandela on 18 July 1918, was a South African anti-apartheid activist, politician, and statesman who served as the first president of South Africa from 1994 to 1999. He was the country's first black head of state and the first elected in a fully representative democratic election. His government focused on dismantling the legacy of apartheid by fostering racial reconciliation. Ideologically an African nationalist and socialist, he served as the president of the African National Congress, the ANC party, from 1991 to 1997. A Xhosa, Mandela was born into the Thembu royal family in Mvezo, South Africa. He studied law at the University of Fort Hare and the University of Witwatersrand before working as a lawyer in Johannesburg. There he became involved in anti-colonial and African nationalist politics, joining the ANC in 1943 and co-founding its youth league in 1944. After the National Party's white-only government established apartheid, a system of racial segregation that privileged whites, Mandela and the ANC committed themselves to its overthrow. He was repeatedly arrested for seditious activities and was unsuccessfully prosecuted in the 1956 treason trial. Although initially committed to non-violent protests, in association with the South African Communist Party, the SACP, he co-founded the militant Mkoto Wesizwe in 1961 and led a sabotage campaign against the apartheid government. He was arrested and imprisoned in 1962 and, following the Rivonia trial, was sentenced to life imprisonment for conspiring to overthrow the state. Mandela served 27 years in prison, split between Robben Island, Pollsmoor prison, and Verster prison. Amid growing domestic and international pressure and fears of racial civil war, President F.W. de Klerk released him in 1990. Mandela and de Klerk led efforts to negotiate an end to apartheid, which resulted in the 1994 multiracial general election, in which Mandela led the ANC to victory and became president. Mandela was a controversial figure for much of his life. Although critics on the right denounced him as a communist terrorist, and those on the far left deemed him too eager to negotiate and reconcile with apartheid's supporters, he gained international acclaim for his activism. Globally regarded as an icon of democracy and social justice, he received more than 250 honors, including the Nobel Peace Prize. He is held with deep respect within South Africa, where he is often referred to by his Thembu clan name, Madiba, and described as the father of the nation. Mandela began studying law at the University of Witwatersrand, where he was the only black African student and faced racism. There he befriended liberal and communist European, Jewish, and Indian students, among them Joe Slovo and Ruth First. Becoming increasingly politicized, Mandela marched on August 1943 in support of his successful bus boycott to reverse fare prices. Over the course of his life, Mandela was given over 250 awards, accolades, prizes, honorary degrees, and citizenships in recognition of his political achievements. These include, among others, the Nobel Peace Prize, the United States Presidential Medal of Freedom, and the Soviet Union's Lenin Peace Prize. In 2004, Johannesburg granted Mandela the freedom of the city, and in 2008, a Mandela statue was unveiled at the spot where Mandela was released from prison. In November 2009, the United Nations General Assembly proclaimed Mandela's birthday, 18 July, as Mandela Day, marking his contribution to the anti-apartheid struggle. After suffering from a prolonged respiratory infection, Mandela died on 5th December 2013 at the age of 95 at his home surrounded by his family. Mandela identified as both an African nationalist, an ideological position he held since joining the ANC, and as a socialist. He was a practical politician rather than an intellectual scholar or political theorist. Mandela was widely considered a charismatic leader, described by biographer Mary Benson as a born mass leader who could not help magnetizing people. He was highly image conscious and throughout his life always sought out fine quality clothes, with many commentators believing that he carried himself in a regal manner. His aristocratic heritage was repeatedly emphasized by supporters, thus contributing to his charismatic power.
Our attitude towards any country is determined by the attitude of that country to our struggle.